It's a story of a company that most people haven't heard of, but it's my favorite of these stories, and you'll see why I think it's weird and interesting. This company, Savioke, was a startup who we invested in at Google Ventures. They're a robotics company. They make a robot that makes deliveries in hotels. It's about this tall, and it has a little hatch. So if you're at the front desk, somebody wants a towel up in room 318, you can open the hatch, put a towel in, close the hatch, type in 318, and the robot is like a little self-driving car. It has sensors. It can navigate its way through the lobby and get to the elevator. It can wirelessly call the elevator. It can get on the elevator, ride the elevator with people. It can get to the third floor, navigate its way to room 318, and when it gets there, it's going to trigger a phone call inside the room. Your delivery is here, kind of a robotic voice. When the door opens, the robot senses that the door is opened, and the hatch pops up. The delivery is made. The robot makes its way back to the lobby. They were a bunch of robotics experts. They had figured out how to do all of these things with off-the-shelf parts. They had produced one proof-of-concept robot that did everything I just described, even plugged itself in when it got home. It was great. But they still had a big question, which was, how should the robot behave around people? And they saw a big challenge here because we've all been spoiled by science fiction. We think that robots have thoughts and plans and hopes and dreams. They fall in love. And certainly you can talk to a robot, right? You can ask it questions. You can give it commands. No, you can't. No, you can't. It won't work. It'll be very frustrating. They said it will be very frustrating if people try to talk to the robot. We can't give it a face. We can't give any suggestion that the robot can talk, or people will be frustrated. We have been in robotics for decades. We've seen this. But they wondered about this. They knew there was going to be a lot of press when the robot came out. They knew it was a weird story. People would talk about it. They knew people would write Yelp reviews. They were afraid, deathly afraid of negative stories, because if you're a startup building hardware, you really have one shot at a launch. If hotels didn't start ordering robots, they'd go out of business. So they were stressed, and they were going to give the robot no personality to play it safe. That was the plan. That was what they built, but they still wondered. So in the design sprint, they said, let's try a personality. Let's spend 1 week focusing on this crazy, risky idea. Let's do something radical. And if it all fails, we'll only have wasted 1 week of time. They made a map, brought a team together, a lot of different skill sets in the room. This is their map. The CEO chooses the moment of delivery. If a customer made it all the way into the hotel room, called for something, opens the door, and doesn't expect a robot, that could be super awkward. Well, why is there a robot here? How do I make it go away? But it could be really great, and they decided that was the biggest risk, the biggest opportunity. So Steve, the CEO, says, show me what this could look like with a personality. Tuesday, the team sketches solutions. This is what it looks like. It's boring, right? I mean, everybody's just working on their own. Some people are sketching ideas that they had that are old ideas. Some of the ideas are new. They're all able to put them on a level playing field, which almost never happens in business, that we get to see the old ideas, the new ideas, the best of them all at once. From those solutions, Steve, the CEO, chooses 3 risky ideas he wants to test. First idea is games. What if the robot could play follow the leader or hide and seek with people? If they enjoyed their robot delivery, maybe that'd be kind of fun. What if the robot had a face? It's the thing that raises the biggest possibility people try to talk to the robot. We know we don't want that to happen, but if it did have a face, it could be super cute. Someone had sketched a face that had a text bubble above it, and the face itself didn't look very intelligent. And the idea was, people see this, they won't think they can talk to the robot. So Steve said, try it. And the third idea was, what if the robot did a dance? Okay, you guys remember what the robot looked like? No arms, no legs, no neck, no hips. We're really talking about this when we talk about the robot dancing. This is how I dance, actually. And I can tell you from personal experience, it's not very charming. People don't want to talk to me. It doesn't do much good. People were skeptical in the room, but Steve said, let's try it, so we had to do it. He's the boss. Okay, so Thursday, the team builds a prototype. They've got 8 hours to prototype all of these ideas. They split up the work. This guy's doing sound effects. These two are working on the face and the text bubbles. They're doing it by making a slideshow, an animated slideshow with hotspots that connect. Put that on an iPad mini, which you can see right here, and then they pop the front panel off of the robot, and they put the iPad on there, and it looks like the robot has a little digital face. For the deliveries themselves, normally the robot is self-driving, it's autonomous, it's running on its own. But for the 5 deliveries, to fake it, to do the dance, to do all this, they could use manual override mode. So here's Tessa, she's the CTO at Savioke, and she's using a PlayStation controller to drive the robot. She practiced on Thursday. The plan was she'd hide around the corner and drive the robot to make the deliveries. Friday, time to run the test. Okay, so the team wanted to do this as realistically as possible. They wanted to conduct the test in a hotel room. This was my colleague, Michael, colleague at Google Ventures. He came to the hotel. This is a photo of him in the room, ready to set up to run the test. He's got in his suitcase cameras, tripods, extension cords, duct tape, all kinds of things, basically setting up a makeshift research lab. Cameras in the hallway, cameras in the room, so that we'll be, I think the hotel was okay with this. Pretty sure it's probably fine. Cameras from all angles. So we're able to see, the team will be able to see how the customer reacts to the robot. 9 a.m., first customer shows up for the test. Okay, I want you to put yourself in the position of this customer for a second. Earlier in the week, you responded to an ad on Craigslist. The ad said, hey, it's a $100 usability test, show up, you make $100, pretty easy. You're thinking, I'm gonna be in Cupertino, cool. I'll fill out this form, answer a bunch of questions about my travel habits, great. Savioke filters all those answers, finds the 5 customers they think are the best match for their target customer. You get an email back from Michael. It says, hey, this is a little unusual. This interview is gonna happen in a hotel room. And you're thinking, Craigslist, $100, hotel room. I don't know if this is such a good idea. But if you're like me, you might sign yourself up for things in the future, your future self that you later regret. So you say yes. Friday rolls around. It's 9 a.m. You show up. You're in the lobby. Michael's there. He says, hey, come with me. You're in the elevator with Michael. Then you're in the hotel room with Michael. There's cameras everywhere. Like, oh, man, I don't think I should have done this. Michael says, we're testing a device. I don't want to tell you what it is until you see it. Oh, God, what did I get myself into? Just give me my $100 and get out of here. But Michael does a really good job of putting the customers at ease. And he says, listen, when you come into a hotel room like this, where would you set your suitcase? You're a frequent traveler. We know you answered questions to that effect. Where do you put your suitcase in a room like this? The person tells him, okay. Do you unpack right away or later? I'll probably unpack right away. Okay, cool. If you found that you'd forgotten your toothbrush, what would you do? Well, I'd probably talk to the front desk, find out where to get a toothbrush, and deal with it. I want to deal with it now so I don't have to deal with it when I'm tired later on. Michael says, okay, cool. Look, here's the phone number for the front desk. Just give them a call. So the person's like, all right. So they call up and they're like, yeah, I'm in room 318. I need a toothbrush. Front desk, which is actually somebody from Savioke, says, oh, sure, send one right up. So meanwhile, the team is able to watch. So it's like the situation room. They have all these different angles in, and they're able to watch as Tessa drives the robot into position. Somebody calls back and says, your delivery is here, in a robotic voice. And they can watch what happens when an unsuspecting guest who doesn't know it's going to be a robot opens the door and sees the robot. They're able to basically fast forward into a possible future in a parallel universe where instead of playing it safe with no personality, they went all in on this personality and they can watch how the person reacts. 5 times throughout the day, they can watch people try to take the toothbrush, try to make the robot go away when they're done. So it turns out that nobody wanted to play hide and seek with a robot in their hotel room. It seems obvious now when I say it to you. Yeah, of course not. But I have to tell you, in the room, it seemed like a really good idea. Do you ever do anything? You ever build anything in your team that in the room seemed like a really good idea, and then afterwards you're like, oh yeah, I guess if I look at that from an outside perspective, it's really stupid. Anyway, that was the case with this one. The face was a big hit. Nobody tried to talk to the robot, but they thought it was cute. They took selfies with it, so that was great. And in fact, even the dance was a big hit, and I was shocked by this. I guess you have to see the robot. This is the way it is in production, and maybe you can see that it's more charming when the robot does it than when I do it. I don't know. It's something about a robot. It works better. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not a good dancer. So The robot, they built it, they put it out into production, and there were a lot of stories in the press. Here they are in the New York Times, and the feature again and again and again was the personality. That's what people talked about. That's what people talked about when they wrote reviews of their experience in the hotel. The robot's personality was the lead. It became the big thing for them. This company's been pretty successful. They're in a bunch of hotels now. They have a deal with FedEx doing warehouse deliveries. It's a good story for a startup, but to me, what's so fascinating about this is the default of playing it safe. We know why we play it safe. We know why we argue. We know why we're careful, because there's a lot at stake. In a design sprint, you can have a radical experiment in a short period of time. You could take a big risk, and if you fail, you've lost 1 week, you've embarrassed yourself in front of 5 customers, but you took a shot at the big risk. And those big, risky ideas, those are often the ones for startups and big companies alike. Those are often the solutions that yield the big results. 2016, the Sprint book came out, and I cannot emphasize this enough. There is a direct correlation between how innovative your team is and how many copies of this book you own. So you don't even have to read it. Just owning the books actually somehow helps. 10 copies a person? Sure, I think you'll be 10 times more innovative. But the book came out, and the process has spread a lot in the last few years. So 2019 now, this process started at Google, the few teams there. Now they have hundreds of people trained to facilitate these design sprints inside Google. Google Ventures, we spread it to the startups who we'd invested in, started to write about it, shared it with more tech companies who picked it up, some of them to a greater extent, and consultancies have picked this up and started to use it. Larger companies have started to pick this up and adopt it at scale. Lego's an example of a company who's adopted design sprints at a big scale. It's now part of the curriculum at Harvard Business School, Stanford Design School, and also being used by governments, nonprofits for things that often don't have anything to do with digital products. It might be the way that they run an internal process or make decisions. Things that I couldn't even have imagined when I was trying to just help Google better start those projects, help Google better fulfill the promise that I saw when I came into the company. So it's cool, and I guess it brings me back to this topic of a culture of innovation. That was the promised topic, right? And look, if you think about the big policy changes that it might take to change a culture, it's scary. It's scary. Change a policy up here, it's going to last years. It's going to take a long time to get everybody doing it, to know if it worked or not. It's scary, and I can't tell you what big policy changes you should make. I just don't know. But I can tell you that you can run a small, radical experiment.